when we talk about changing your life, absolutely the first thing you have to do is take ownership of your present. That might sound simple, maybe even obvious, but it's often the hardest and most confronting step because it requires you to stop pointing outward and start looking inward. It asks you to stop blaming your job, your upbringing, your environment, or other people, and instead ask yourself, what role have I played in creating the reality I'm in today? Now, this isn't about self-criticism. It's about self-honesty. There's a massive difference. Self-criticism keeps you stuck. It sounds like I always mess things up or I'm not good enough. But self-honesty sounds like I've made choices that led me here. And if I have the power to make those choices, I have the power to make new ones. Taking ownership doesn't mean everything that happened to you is your fault. It means that how you respond to those things, how you choose to move forward, is entirely within your control. That's a kind of power most people overlook because it's easy to stay stuck in the narrative that you're a product of what happened to you. It's harder, but infinitely more freeing to step into the truth that you are the architect of what comes next. If you think about your life like a map, most people spend a lot of time circling where they've been. They draw little emotional landmarks around their failures, their regrets, their setbacks. And that map just becomes a record of where they don't want to be. But when you take ownership, you stop circling the past and start marking a new destination. You say, okay, here's where I am. This is my starting point. Now, what's next? There's something incredible that happens when you fully accept where you are right now. You stop wasting energy trying to rewrite history or wishing things were different. Instead, you channel that energy into creating what's possible. And this shift, this mental redirection actually changes your biology. It's not just a mindset thing. It changes your physiology. Your body responds to that internal narrative shift. Your levels of stress hormones drop, your attention sharpens, your motivation increases. You become more resilient, more capable of focused effort. Why? Because you've stopped arguing with reality and you've started engaging with it. One of the most common things I hear when people are stuck is this phrasing, I don't know what to do. And often that's not true. Most of the time, we do know what needs to happen. We just don't like the answer. Maybe the answer is uncomfortable. Maybe it requires admitting a hard truth or making a difficult change or letting go of something familiar. But taking ownership means looking directly at those answers and saying, I'm willing to face this. There's no magic moment that makes it easier. You won't suddenly wake up one day and feel completely fearless. That's not how this works. What happens instead is that you begin to build momentum. You make one honest decision, then another, and each time you do, your confidence grows, not because the world changes, but because your relationship with yourself changes. You start to trust yourself, and when you trust yourself, you stop looking for permission. You stop waiting for the right time. You stop needing everything to be perfect before you begin. You realize that this is your life. One is coming to live it for you. No one is coming to hand you a guarantee, and that's okay because you don't need one. What you need is a decision, a real internal commitment that says, no matter where I've been, I know I can create something better. So take a breath, look around at your current situation, whatever it is, and instead of resisting it or resenting it or pretending it's not what it is, own it, own every part of it with clarity and courage. Because from that place of ownership, you reclaim your power to choose what comes next. Change starts now. If you're serious about changing your life, then after taking full ownership of your present, the next thing you have to do is look at your mindset, because the way you think is either building your future or quietly destroying it. Your mindset is the filter through which you experience everything. It influences how you interpret challenges, how you respond to failure, how you handle success, and most importantly, how you define what's possible for you. Most people don't realize that the thoughts running through their minds every day are not facts. They're habits. You've thought certain things so often that they become automatic, almost invisible to you, but they're shaping your actions, your emotions, and even your biology. And if you never stop to examine those thought patterns, you can spend your entire life operating under assumptions that aren't even true. For example, if you've told yourself for years that you're not good with people, that belief becomes a lens. You might avoid speaking up in conversations or hesitate to pursue leadership opportunities, not because you can't, but because your mind has already decided that you're not capable. That belief limits your behavior, and your behavior reinforces the belief. It becomes a self-fulfilling loop. The good news is the brain is plastic. It's changeable. You're not locked into your current thought patterns forever. But change doesn't happen just because you want it. It happens because you train for it deliberately, consistently. This is where the science is actually really encouraging repeated mental focus in a specific direction begins to rewire your neural circuits. You can literally carve new pathways in your brain by choosing different thoughts and forcing them over time. But this takes awareness. You have to start paying attention to the story you're telling yourself every day. When something doesn't go the way you planned, do you automatically think, see, I'm not cut out for this? Or do you think, okay, that didn't work. What can I learn from it? The first mindset keeps you stuck. The second one moves you forward. That's not just semantics, it's neurochemistry. The mindset you adopt in response to difficulty affects your stress response, your motivation, even your immune system. And the beautiful part is you get to choose. You can't always choose your external circumstances, but you can always choose the internal narrative you attach to them. This doesn't mean lying to yourself or pretending everything is great when it's not. It means framing things in a way that moves you toward growth instead of paralysis. It means deciding that setbacks are part of the process, not signals that you should stop. Now, I want to be really clear about something. This isn't about toxic positivity or just thinking happy thoughts. That's not what creates change. What creates change is building a mindset grounded in reality, anchored in discipline, and fueled by possibility. A mindset that acknowledges pain or fear or doubt, but doesn't let those things take the wheel. You're allowed to feel those emotions, but you're not required to obey them. A powerful mindset doesn't come from motivation. It comes from repetition, from doing the hard thing over and over until it becomes who you are, from deciding every day that your future is more important than your comfort. And sometimes that means having a conversation with yourself that sounds like this, though. I hear you, fear. I know you're trying to protect me, but I've got this now. When you start to operate from that place, everything changes. You stop being reactive and you start being intentional. You begin to design your responses instead of being run by emotional reflexes. And you start to notice something powerful. The external world becomes easier to manage, not because it changed, but because you did. So the question is, what thoughts have you been rehearsing? What beliefs have you been letting run on autopilot? And are they moving you toward the life you want or holding you in place? If you're going to change your life, you have to be willing to change your mind, and not just once, but repeatedly. Every time the old pattern shows up, you meet it with something new, something better, something that aligns with who you're becoming, not who you've been. Because when you change the way you think, you change everything. Once you've taken ownership of your present and started to shift your mindset, there's a point where thought has to become action. No amount of reflection or clarity will change your life unless you're willing to move. And not just move, but break the cycle with bold action. That's where transformation really begins. Because insight without execution just becomes another form of procrastination. You can sit with all the right intentions, all the new beliefs, all the self-awareness, but until you do something different, you're still in the same place. This is where most people get stuck. They overthink, they wait for certain, they convince themselves they need more time, more information, more permission. But in reality, the thing they need most is motion. You cannot think your way into a new life. You have to act your way there. And that action often looks uncomfortable, unfamiliar, even risky. But that's the point. Bold action disrupts old patterns. It interrupts the momentum of the past and forces the brain to adapt, recalibrate, and grow. And let's be clear, bold doesn't have to mean reckless or dramatic. It doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow or turning your world upside down overnight. Bold means intentional. Bold means doing the thing you've been avoiding, the thing that stretches you, the thing that challenges your current identity. It could be as simple as having a conversation you've been putting off, signing up for something that scares you a little, or setting a boundary you've never dared to enforce. Boldness isn't measured by the size of the action. It's measured by how much it pushes your edge. This kind of action activates something powerful in your brain. It shifts you from passive to active. It signals to your nervous system that you're not just thinking about change, you're embodying it. That shift changes your brain chemistry. Dopamine gets released, not just as a reward, but as motivation. It starts to propel you forward. And every time you take another step, the brain starts to rewire itself to support that new identity. But here's the thing, bold action often brings resistance. The moment you do something new, your mind will try to pull you back. That's not failure. That's biology. The brain is designed to keep you safe, and safe often means familiar, even if familiar is miserable. So when resistance shows up, don't interpret it as a sign to stop. Interpret it as a signal that you're stepping into the unknown, and that's exactly where change happens. So you have to build the muscle of acting in spite of resistance. That's how confidence is built, not by waiting to feel ready, but by proving to yourself that you can handle discomfort. Every time you lean into discomfort and act anyway, you send a message to your system, I can trust myself. I can do hard things. And that trust becomes the foundation of resilience. And let's be honest, there's never a perfect time to act. Life doesn't wait until you feel completely prepared. If anything, the longer you wait, the harder it gets because indecision becomes inertia. Every day you delay, your comfort zone tightens its grip. And suddenly you're not just stuck, you're shrinking. So instead of waiting for the perfect moment, create momentum. Start messy. Start small, but start because bold action isn't about having everything figured out. It's about being willing to move before you're fully ready. What's incredible is how quickly momentum builds. One decision leads to another. One step becomes two. And then something clicks. You realize you're no longer just dreaming about change. You're living it. You're not who you were even a week ago. And the more you act in alignment with your vision, the more your identity begins to shift You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to change, and you start seeing yourself as someone who does. It's that shift from wishful thinking to aligned action that turns a desire into a reality. And once you've felt that shift, you'll never forget it. It becomes part of your wiring, not because of easy, but because you earned it through courage, through persistence, and through bold, repeated movement forward, even when it wasn't comfortable, even when no one else understood. So if you're standing on the edge of something in your life right now, if there's a decision you've been putting off or a step you've been afraid to take, let this be the moment you stop hesitating. Don't wait for the fear to go away. Walk with it, because nothing changes without motion. Once you've taken ownership of where you are, mastered your mindset, and begun taking bold action, there's one more crucial piece to this puzzle, and it's often the difference between temporary change and lasting transformation. You have to design your future with intention. Change that sticks doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you stop reacting to life and start creating it. That means getting deliberate about your direction, your habits, your environment, and your values. Most people wake up each day and let life happen to them. They check their phones, answer messages, go through the motions, and repeat yesterday without really asking it's leading anywhere meaningful. But the truth is, if you're not designing your life, someone else is. Algorithms are designing your focus, social pressures are shaping your priorities, and distractions are filling in the gaps. You can't afford to let your future unfold on autopilot. You have to get clear about what you're building and who you want to become. The first step is vision. You need a mental image of the life you're working toward, not just in vague terms like, I want to have it, or I want to be successful. You need to define it. What does it actually look like to live a life that feels aligned with who you are and what you value? What do your days look like? What kind of people are you surrounded by? How do you spend your energy? With that kind of clarity, even your best efforts can feel scattered. But when you know what you're aiming for, everything starts to organize around it. This isn't about scripting every detail of your life. It's about choosing direction over drift. You don't need to know every step of the journey, but you do need to know which way you're facing. Think of it like navigating through fog. If you have a compass, you might not see the whole path, but you can still move with purpose. You can still trust that every step forward is part of something bigger. Once you have that vision, you start aligning your daily actions with it. And this is where most people trip. They think the big moments are what create change, but it's the small, consistent choices you make every day that shape your future. The things you say yes to, the boundaries you hold, the routines you protect. These are the bricks that build your life. And when those actions are aligned with a clear vision, your identity begins to catch up. You start becoming the person who lives that kind of life. Not someday, but now. But designing your future also means protecting it, because the moment you get intentional, distractions will come for you. Old habits will try to pull you back. People who don't share your vision might question your choices, and that's okay. You're not building your life for their approval. You're building it for alignment. So you have to get really good at filtering. Ask yourself constantly, does this move me closer to the life I want or further away? That question, asked often enough, becomes a compass. And the more you honor it, the more momentum you build. Part of intentional living also involves designing your environment to support your vision. Your habits don't exist in a vacuum. They're influenced by the people you're around, the keys in your space, the friction or lack of it between you and your goals. Want to read more? Put books within reach and your phone in another room. Want to eat better? Set your kitchen up so the healthy choice is the easy one. These aren't hacks, they're architecture. You're building a life where the path of least resistance leads you to who you want to become. And maybe the most powerful part of designing your future is realizing that you don't need permission. You don't need a breakthrough moment or a perfect plan. You need to begin. You need to act like the person who lives the life you want to live, even if it feels like a stretch at first, because the more you show up that way, the more it becomes real. You're not waiting to become that version of yourself. You're rehearsing it, training your brain, your body, your choices to align with something greater. It's not about chasing perfection. It's about alignment. When your values, your vision, and your actions start to line up, something shifts. Life doesn't feel like a grind. It feels purposeful. And even on the hard days, there's a sense of forward movement because you know what you're building. You're not just surviving, you're shaping, you're creating. You're living on purpose. And that's how real lasting change takes root, not as a one-time decision, but as a daily practice of living like your future matters